This is a bar of soap, and this is the box it came in. Let's get started. The problem with remote sensing academia is the problem with all academia, and that is you can't publish bad results. We see the same problem in medicine, we see the same problem in psychology. You can really only publish success stories. The reason for that is that journals just don't want to accept bad results. I mean, it doesn't make for a great journal article. And even if you can get it accepted into a journal, it's not going to be well cited. Nobody's going to care. In the past, this has affected me. I mean, I have published results that took almost a year to work out. I finally got it published. They're not very good, and it's my least cited paper. Couple that with the fact that if you're a graduate student or you're a researcher and you've spent 1, 2, 3, 4 years on a project, you have to be successful. It's just a requirement. So you see a lot of people in the field of remote sensing passing maps off that are potentially not very good for most use cases. And we see them passing this off in the academic literature, and they'll often claim that it's a success. And maybe in some context it is. But the challenge here is that what we end up with is a corpus of academic literature claiming success with every different type of satellite and every different technology and every different modeling technique. And it can be really difficult for the uninitiated to weed through all that and see how remote sensing really has to be done. And I am guilty of this, right? I have made maps and passed them off when they're really not good for a particular use case. They're really not good for what they're designed to do. And I'm not going to do that anymore in my career. That's why I'm standing here in my backyard screaming at the camera. You know, I've worked with a lot of first-year grad students, and oftentimes I have to be the one that points out, oh yeah, okay, there's this paper from this prominent scientist, but you really don't want to use that technique. You really don't want to use that technology. There are fundamental limitations to certain sensors, right? Like some of these sensors that are in orbit right now are really just measuring the greenness of forests. That doesn't tell you how much carbon is stored in them. That doesn't tell you how many trees there are. You know, I've also encountered a lot of really smart people who haven't been in this field for a decade. And they read these papers and they're not trained academically to read between the lines or to find that one line in a discussion that really reveals the issues with the maps. And so they read these papers and they'll go and try to implement it, and it won't work. So this is a real problem, and it gets to a bigger problem in remote sensing in general, in that over-promising is really predominant in our field. And don't get me wrong, I'm a true believer. With remote sensing, you can measure absolutely everything about a forest. I'm fully converted to the idea that we don't need forest inventories at all. But you need to use the right techniques. And the proper remote sensing techniques to measure everything about a forest are tremendously expensive. And so, you know, academics and other folks, they want to make these maps without spending $250,000 on LiDAR or hyperspectral imagery. And so they're using these inferior technologies that really don't pass it. You know, I've spoken to folks at timber companies who are just thoroughly burnt out on remote sensing, even though it could be really valuable to their whole product chain. And the reason for that is that they've gotten maps that just aren't very good. I don't have a solution to this problem. Nor does anyone, right? And we should probably fix this problem in medicine before we deal with it in remote sensing. But all I can do is make a series of these ever more ranting videos in which I'm more or less describing which techniques I feel are useful for measuring the forest using remote sensing. And I hope that you come away with this with at least a little bit of the expertise that I've gathered over the decade of my field, and I hope that I don't make too many enemies. At least I'm not naming names.